So we got a DLL called system.dll. System.dll comes with set of namespaces. One of them is system namespace. System namespace. What is the concept of namespace? When you talk about a library will have collection of namespaces. And when you talk about a namespace will have collection of user-defined data types, collection of classes, collection of structures, collection of interfaces. So library will act as a container for collection of namespaces. It is a place where you can group collection of namespaces into one place. And when you talk about namespace will have collection of user-defined data types. What is a user-defined data type? It can be a class, it can be structure or interface. So basically, namespace will act as a container for collection of user-defined data types, collection of classes, structures, and interfaces. Basically, whenever you want to group set of namespace, set of user-defined data types, set of classes, set of structures, set of name interfaces, then you'd be needing a container called namespace. Okay. So when you talk about system namespace, as I said, namespace will have collection of user-defined data types, collection of classes and collection of structures and interfaces. So when you talk about system namespace, this namespace also comes with set of classes. System namespace also comes with set of classes. One of them is console class. One of them is console class. What is a class? Class is one of the user-defined data type. So when you talk about a user-defined data type, so what is a user-defined data type? A user-defined data type can be defined as collection of data members and member functions. A user-defined data type will have collection of methods, collection of subprograms, collection of member functions. Subprogram, method, member function, all are same. So when you talk about a console class, console is also one of the class. So when you talk about a console class also comes with set of functionalities, set of subprograms, set of methods. Some of them are read and write. So once again I repeat, we got a library called system.dll. When you talk about a library will have collection of namespaces. When you talk about system.dll, it also comes with set of namespaces. One of them is system namespace. When you talk about a namespace will always have collection of user-defined data types. When you talk about user-defined data type, it can be a class, it can be a structure, it can be interface. So when you talk about system namespace, this will have collection of classes, structures and interfaces. So when you talk about system namespace, it comes with set of classes. One of them is console class. And when you talk about console class, it comes with set of functionalities, set of subprograms, set of methods. And some of them are read and write. Read and write. A read is nothing but your scanf in C, and write is nothing but printf in C. So your read is called as input statement and write is called as output statement. Whenever you want to read something from the user, when you want to get some input from the user, then input statement has to be used, which is nothing but read. When you want to display something on the screen, when you want to present something to the end user, then output statement has to be used, that is nothing but a write. Okay, so let's move towards the first one, that is input statement, read. So let's see, so how to implement a read statement in C#. Any questions guys so far? Okay. Input statement in C#. So as I said, console is a class which comes with two methods, a read and write. So a read is considered as input statement. Let's see in how many different ways a read can be implemented in C#. In C, whenever you want to scan something from the user, you have to use only scanf statement. There are no different forms of scanf is available in C. Only scanf has to be used. But when it comes to read in C#, A read can be implemented in two different ways. Those are going to be a read and read line. An input statement can be implemented in two ways. Those are going to be read and read line. So what is the difference between these two? Whenever you want to get some input from the user, any one of these two can be used. You can go with read and you can go with read line as well. But when should I go for read and when should I go for read line? See, when you talk about a read reads a single character. A read reads a single character like A, B, C. It cannot read group of characters. For example, you need to read a username. When you talk about a username, a name will have more than one character, collection of characters. In that case, if at all you are going to read name of the user, in that case, if I use read method, it doesn't work because read reads a single character. It reads only one character at a time. You cannot read group of characters. In that case, your approach should be towards another statement called a read line. When you talk about read line, it reads group of characters. There is no limitation for it. When you talk about read line, it reads collection of characters. So if at all you are going to read name of the user, in that case, which statement has to be used? A read line has to be used. A single character can also be read using read line. A single character can also be used using read line. Then why we need read? So when you talk about a read is a lightweight functionality compared to read line. Read is a lightweight functionality compared to read line. So obviously it will reduce some burden on the system process as well. So that is the reason if you are going to read a single character, like in case of gender, the expected value is going to be either M or F. M indicates male, F indicates female, right? So finally user is going to enter either M or F. So in that case, you don't have to go through a read line. So better make use of a read so that it will reduce some burden on the system. You can expect a better performance over there. If at all you are going to read more than one character, obviously the read cannot be used. Then your approach should be towards only read line. Okay, so that is the difference between read and read line. Okay, that's fine. But how to use these statements in C#? How to use this statement in C#? If I simply write read and read line, as I said, when it comes to compiler, it does not know anything about your programming environment. It is just dummy. Everything should be instructed by the developer, your programming environment. It doesn't know what to do and how to do. In case of read and read line also, if you just write read or read line, once the compiler comes to your read line, it doesn't know what is the functionality of read, what is the functionality of read line. Simply it throws the error, right? So, but how to write this? See, when you talk about a read is a method, read is a functionality which comes with console class. Console is a class which comes with system namespace. So in order to use this particular statement, so what has to be done? This complete reference has to be provided in the programming environment. What is that reference? At the top level, we got a namespace called system. System is a namespace which comes with console. Console is a class which contains read method. So in order to access either read or write, so what has to be done? This complete reference has to be provided. How to provide this? System.console.read. Same thing here. System.console.read. The first part indicates namespace name. Second part indicates class name. And third part indicates your actual method or functionality. And how to use read line? System.console.read. Any questions, guys, so far? Okay. Let's move towards the next statement, that is output. Output statement. So as I said, whenever you want to read something from the user, you'll have to use input statement. And when you want to send something to the user, then you have to use output statement. So here, like printf, here Microsoft is providing a write statement. Whenever you want to print something on the screen or send something to the user, then you have to use output statement here, which is nothing but write. In C or C++, there is only one statement called printf. In C++, cout. A printf can be implemented, that should be implemented in only one way because it doesn't contain multiple forms of same method. But coming to C#, even an output statement can also be implemented in two different ways. Those are going to be write and write line. Write and write line. So whenever you want to print something, you can use any one of these two statements. You can use either write or write line. So what is the difference between these two? So when you talk about write, it prints all your messages in the same line. Let's say, welcome to India. These are three different words. Welcome is one word, to is another word, India is another word. Let's say I'm using write statement to print these three messages. Something like write welcome, write to, write India. So what it will do, you can print a number of messages using write, but what it will do, it will try to print all these messages in the same line. Now you will see these three messages in the same line, welcome to India. So when you talk about write, the functionality of write is, it prints all messages in a single line. If you want, each message has to be displayed in a different line. I mean, welcome should be displayed in one line, to just be displayed in the next line, and India should be displayed in the next line. So if you want to separate all your messages using a new line, or if you want each message has to be displayed in a separate line, then your approach should be towards another statement called a write line. When you talk about write line, it displays each message in a separate line. That is the difference between write and write line. So that depends upon your requirement. Sometimes you may need to print all your messages in a single line. Sometimes you need to separate them using a new line. So that depends upon your requirement. Okay, let's say if you're going to write a gaming program, or if you're going to print stars, first to 5 stars should be displayed in the same line, and next star 5 stars should be displayed in another line. So in order to print first to 5 stars in the same line, you'll have to use write. Again, to separate them, you have to use write line. So sometimes you may need to use write, sometimes you may need to use write line, sometimes you may need to use combination of both write and write line. That depends upon your requirement. Okay, in C or C++, whenever you want to break the current line, we used to write /n. What is /n? /n is nothing but new line. If it doesn't specify that /n, it will not break your line. So it will print, it will works like a write statement, right? Here you don't have to write any /n. Whenever you need to print something, when you want to split any message into multiple lines, you don't have to write any /n. Simply just make use of a write line. That will take care of splitting your message into different lines based on your requirement. Okay, fine. But again, if I simply write write line, again your compiler will get confused because it doesn't know anything about write and write line. So in order to make use of these two statements, in order to call a write and write line, so what has to be done? Again, you need to mention the complete path of the complete reference of this method. So what is that? When you talk about a write is a functionality which comes with console class, and console comes with system namespace. That is the reason here you are trying complete thing. System.console.write. System.console.write line. See, when it comes to input and output statement, we'll be writing this statement in 1,000 different places, because in many places we'll be reading data from the user, we'll be giving something to the user. So when it comes to real-time application, this keyword might get repeated some 1,000 different times. In that case, every time you need to write something like system.system.system.system. Right? It will waste a lot of development time, as well as it will also increase the complexity of the program. Can't we stop writing system.system.system. Because every time you will have to write the same story, system.system.system. you're kind of you're duplicating your logic. You're writing the same keyword again and then again 1,000 different times, which will increase a lot of complexity. So yes, you can. If you want to stop writing the namespace name, then what has to be done? This particular namespace has to be imported into your programming environment. If you want to stop writing namespace name, if you want to write only class and method name, then you need to import that respective namespace into your programming environment. So how to import a namespace? Here we have a sorry. See, whenever you want to import any namespace into C# programming environment, then you would use a keyword called using. Using. In Java, we used to write imports. Your namespace is nothing but in Java it is package. In Java we used to call it as package. Whenever you want to import a package into Java programming environment, then you need to write imports. Here imports is nothing but using. Whenever you want to import any namespace into your programming environment, then you will have to use using keyword. Using and namespace name. What is the namespace name? System. That's it. So this will take care of importing that complete interface, that namespace into your programming environment. So once it gets imported, now you don't have to write every time system.system.system. You can stop writing that namespace name since it has already been referred in our programming environment. You can simply write console.read, console.write, console.read line. Okay. So this is something about how to import a namespace into your programming environment. So any questions guys so far? Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's move towards the next concept. Oh, can you see my screen? Okay. So next. Now we know how to input statement, output statement. We know how to read data and we know how to display data on the screen or present something to the user, right? Now we can start writing small basic programs. But ultimately, in order to start with the programming, first you should also be aware of a variable declaration, because in order to hold any data, in order to perform operation between two data members, you need to define some variables and you need to store data into the respective locations. Then only you'll be able to perform operations between two values. That's why, so to perform any operation, any mathematical operation or any kind of operations, so variables are mandatory. So you need to be aware of the variable declaration. You need to know how to define a memory location, how to define a variable, how to define its type, how to allocate the memory, and how to store values into the respective locations that every developer should be aware of. Okay. So let's move towards the next concept, that is called variable declaration. Variable declaration. Whenever you want to store any data, when you want to hold some data within your programming environment, then you need to define a variable. How to define it? So you need to follow a standard syntax provided by C system to define your variables. What is the standard syntax? So it is very simple. So first, access specifier. Next part is data type. Next part is variable name is equal to some value. This is called variable declaration. What is that? Access specifier, data type, variable name, and value. Let's look into all these parts. A variable declaration contains 4 different parts. What are those? Access specifier, data type, variable name, and value. Let's have a look into this. What are those parts? When you talk about a value is optional. If you want, you can provide the value at the time of declaration. Otherwise, later also it can be overwritten or assigned. So this is optional. You don't have to worry about it. Actually, I have slides in another system, so I need to get it into new system. This is my new laptop. So tomorrow I'll get all the slides. Just bear with me for today only. Can you see it now? Okay. So whenever you want to define any variable in C# environment, you need to follow the standard syntax. What is that? First, you need to define access specifier, then define its data type, then define name of the variable. Then if you want, you can assign some value at the time of declaration. Okay, so in order to define any variable, so you should be aware of all these parts, each and every part of your syntax. So let's have a look into all these parts. First, value. Value is nothing but it can be anything. It is 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, blah, blah. So based on your requirement. So basically value is nothing but a data. You can assign any kind of data. Value is nothing but data. So if you want to provide it at the time of declaration, you can. Otherwise, if you want to leave it blank at the time of declaration, that can also be possible. So this is optional. Value is optional. So you don't have to worry about it while defining your variable. This can also be provided later. Okay. And second part is variable name. What is this variable name? This is one of the user defined one. User has to define it. So coming to variable name, you can give any name, A, B, C, blah, blah. You can also give your name. That is your choice. So you don't have to worry about variable name also because it is a user defined one. So user can provide any name, any meaningful name. And next and most important thing is data type. This is very, very important. Based on the volume of data, type of data, you will have to specify how much amount of memory should be created in the slot, how much amount of space has to be allocated for your data. So as a developer, you have to decide what type of data has to be taken, like what data type has to be taken, and how much amount of space has to be allocated in the slot. So while defining each and every data member, you should also specify these two things. So that depends upon your requirement. That depends upon value that is going to be stored into this particular location. Here you have to measure two things like volume as well as type. Type in the sense it can be, you will have to decide whether it is a numerical data or non-numerical data. If it is a numerical, it is an integer or float. If it is a non-numerical, so many things will come into the picture. It can be character, string, boolean, image, picture, song. So based on the volume and type of data, you will have to specify the data type. So based on this data type, system will allocate only that much amount of memory for this particular variable. Right? You don't need to worry about value. You don't need to worry about variable name, but you should take care of data type. It should be accurate. We have already discussed, we are also aware of data types. We already discussed data types in the last class, right? So based on the type of data, you'll have to specify this. Yes. Out of 4 parts, we are aware of these 3 parts, right? We know the value, we know about variable name, and we also know about data type. You just need to be aware of the last part, that is called access specifier. If you are aware of the access specifier, then you can start building your programming logic. You can start defining different data members, variables. So what is access specifier? What is access specifier? It plays one of the important key role in the real-time applications. Access specifier plays one of the important key role in the real-time application. So what it does? See, when it comes to banking applications, you'll be capturing some confidential data over there. Let's say the balance details. Balance details. That is one of the secured, more secure data, right? One user detail should not be exposed to another user. Coming to balance details, you should not expose those details to other users. And when it comes to network, when data is flowing from one system to another system over the networks, in between those two systems, hackers can enter into the network and they can hack your data. So that is the reason security will play one of the important key role in the applications and data, right? So while designing your data member, you should also define security levels around your data. You should tell the system where this particular data should be visible to only your family, only your class, or outside of the class, or within the namespace, or outside of the namespace, within the library, or outside of the library. So the scope of visibility should be defined at the time of declaration. The scope will come into the picture based on the type and sensitivity of the data. When it comes to balance details, it should not be exposed to other users, other classes, other namespaces, other libraries. You should implement some complex security levels around this data. It should be very confidential, right? So in this case, like balance, so there will be many data members, many scenarios. But as a developer, so what is your responsibility? While designing each and every data member, you should also define the security levels around your data. You should also tell the system what kind of security mechanism has to be applied towards your data members, right? So how to define a security level around your data? So a security can be implemented at programming level. A security can be implemented using only one special type of thing, that is called access specifier. Access specifier. A security can be implemented at a number of levels. But first, the basic security has to be implemented at your programming level. So how to implement that basic security around your data? So that basic security at programming level can be implemented using access specifier. So that's why I'm saying that access specifier plays one of the important key role in the real-time application everywhere in any programming language, whether it's Java, .NET or C++. It can be any kind of technology. Everywhere you'll have to define the security of your data member and data and member function. So in C#, how to define a security? A security at programming level can be implemented using access specifier. And you should tell the system that the particular data member should be accessible to only your class or outside of the class, within the namespace or outside of the namespace, within the library or outside the library. So that kind of scope has to be implemented at data member level. So that scope can be implemented using access specifier. What is meant by access specifier? Access specifier will define the scope of the access of that particular data member. It will define the scope of the data member. It will tell the system where that particular data member should be visible to only class members, whether should be visible to only your friend class, or within the namespace, outside of the namespace, within the library, outside of the library. Okay, so that is the job of your access specifier. Now let's see. So as I said, in order to define any data member, so you should be aware of these four parts. Okay, so now out of these four, we are aware of the remaining three: data type, variable name, and value. We just need to learn only that last part, that is called access specifier. If you are aware of access specifier, then you can start writing. You can start building different data members. Okay, so let's move towards the next concept called access specifier. So after learning access specifier, again we'll come back to variable declaration, because in order to define a variable, you should also be aware of access specifier. You need to know how to define the scope of a data member. So let's move towards the next concept, that is access specifiers. Okay, access specifiers. See, so don't regret all these things. Okay, see, I'm going to let us consider two different assemblies. What is meant by assembly? A library can also be called as assembly. Both are same. A library can also be called as assembly. Here, I have two different assemblies. It means libraries. Assembly 1 and assembly 2. In assembly 1, this is my assembly. Assembly 1 is ours. And assembly 2 is a third party assembly. This is not ours. That was not implemented by our group. It is a third party group. Okay, but assembly 1 is ours. Try to understand the concept, is very important. We have two different assemblies, assembly 1 and assembly 2. Assembly 1 is our group, is our assembly. In assembly 1, I am going to design a class called C1. I am going to design a class called C1. In C1, I am going to define set of data members. Those are going to be very confidential. You need to implement some tight security levels around your data member. As per my requirement, if you define any data member in C1, that should be available to only C1. That should be visible to only C1. It should not be accessible to other classes within your assembly. If C2 try to access your data member, yes, it should not be accessible. So as per my requirement, the data should be accessible to only this class, only that same class. It should not be accessible to other classes outside of your class. That is what my requirement. So when you want your data, the scope of your data should be limited up to only your class level. When the scope of your data member has to be limited only up to your class level, when it should be accessible to only your class, then it should be defined as private. Then it should be defined as private. One second. Okay, sorry. Okay. Here we have a class called C1. I'm going to define a data member. Let's say balance details. There we are going to store balance details of the user, of the customer. So that is the reason. It is very confidential data. That's why you need to implement some complex security levels around your data. It should not be visible to other users. So as per my requirement, if you define any data member in this class, it should be accessible to only this class. It should not be accessible to other classes even within the same assembly also. When the scope of a data member has to be limited up to class level, when it should be accessible to only your class members, then it should be defined as private. Once any data member is defined as private, the scope of that particular data will be limited up to only this class. If C2 try to access that data member, it should not be accessible. Or C3, if anyone from your assembly try to access your data, they cannot. Once you define any data member as private, the scope will be limited up to only that particular class. Within the same class, anyone can access it. But once it comes outside of the class, nobody can access your data member. So when the scope of any data member has to be limited up to class level, then it should be defined as private. Any questions, guys, so far? Okay. Next scenario. It is really very interesting. I don't want to expose, in the first scenario, I want my data should be available to only my class. That is the reason we defined it as private. In second scenario, there are 100 different classes in the same assembly. In my assembly, there are 100 different classes. I don't know anything about other classes, but C2 is my very good friend, is my relative. C2 is my relative. I can't trust any other classes C3, C4 and C100, but I can trust C2 since I'm having some relationship with C2. That is the reason in the second scenario, I would like to extend the scope of my data up to my relative level. I would like to extend the scope of my data up to my relative level. It means I want my data should be accessible to my class members as well as one of my relative, not to all other classes. It should be accessible to my class as well as only my relative class. The best real-time example for this is, see, you all are from India, right? When it comes to India, there are 100 different banks like ICICI, SBH, SBI, and there are 100 different banks. And there is a master bank called RBI, the Reserve Bank of India. All these banks will be controlled by master bank called Reserve Bank of India, right? All private banks and government banks will be controlled by Reserve Bank of India. See, as per Reserve Bank of India norms, if any transaction amount gets exceeded 50,000, then that information, that customer information, transaction information should be shared with Reserve Bank of India. See, there are two different banks, ICICI and HDFC. ICICI should not expose their customer details to HDFC. HDFC should not expose their customer details to ICICI. It means ICICI will never share their customer details with HDFC. HDFC will never share their customer details with ICICI. But it can be ICICI, it can be HDFC. In any bank, if the transaction amount gets exceeded 50,000, they should share information with the Reserve Bank of India. Let us assume that C1 is ICICI Bank and C2 is Reserve Bank of India. Let us assume that C1 is ICICI Bank and C2 is Reserve Bank of India. You should not expose any information to other banks. But if the customer details, if the customer amount, transaction amount gets exceeded 50,000 rupees, then you should share this particular information with Reserve Bank of India, that is nothing but C2. Why are we sharing that information with C2? We have some relationship established with Reserve Bank of India. Every bank will have relationship with Reserve Bank of India. In any bank, let us consider each bank as one class. Let us consider each bank as one class. Every bank is having a relationship with Reserve Bank of India. So in any bank, if the transaction amount gets exceeded 50,000, immediately they should make this information accessible to Reserve Bank of India. In this scenario, actually this balance details should not be exposed to anyone. But in case of previous scenario, if the transaction amount gets exceeded 50,000, then you need to make this particular information available to only C2 because you are having some relationship with C2. They should not be exposed with the C3. They should not be exposed with C4, C5, C100, but it should be available to C2. So in this case, you need to extend the scope of this particular data up to your relative level. In this case, the data should be accessible to your bank as well as Reserve Bank of India, your class as well as C2. So when the scope of any data member has to be extended up to relative level, then it should be defined as protected. Protected. Once you define any data member as protected, so the scope will be extended up to your relative level. So that data member can be accessible within your class as well as it will be accessible to your relative class also. Any questions, guys, so far? Okay. So as we discussed, once you define it as private, the scope will be limited up to class level. Once you define it as protected, the scope will be extended up to your relative level. I mean, your class can access that data and your related class can also access your data member. Okay, next. Next scenario. If you take any banking sector, let's say if you take Merrill Lynch or Bank of America. Bank of America is a group. Internally, it contains different segments like banking sector, credit card sectors, personal loan sectors, and home loan sector, right? So let us treat this assembly as Bank of America group. Let us consider C1 as banking sector, C2 as credit card sector, and C3 as personal loans and C4 as home loan sector, right? So all these classes are belongs to same group here, right? Banking sector. Within the Bank of America group, we have different sectors, but all these groups are belongs to Bank of America. See, once the customer information gets registered in any one of this group, let's say I've taken bank account from banking sector of Bank of America. My details will be stored under Bank of America database. So immediately what they will do, they will give access to other group sectors, like they will give access to credit cards, they'll give access to personal bank, they'll give access to home loans. At least they will share that particular information, not your balance details and all. They'll make some part of your data accessible to other sectors because they're having relationship with other sectors. They're also part of their group. That's why next day someone will call you, hey guy, are you interested in taking credit cards? Are you interested in taking personal loan, home loan? So in this scenario, once information is entered in any one of the sector, once the information is registered in C1, either C2 or C3 or C4, once the information is registered, the user information is registered either in banking sector or personal loans, home loans or credit cards. So immediately or sometimes you may need to make this data accessible to other sectors also. It is not mandatory, but you may need to make that data accessible to other sector also. I mean, if I store something in C1, it should be accessible to C2, C3, C4. It should be accessible to all sectors within my group. There is another group called Bank of Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch will also have same sectors like banking sector, credit cards, personal loans, home loans, right? So this is Bank of America sector and this is Merrill Lynch sector. So within my group, the data should be available to each and every class, but once this comes outside of the group, it should not be accessible. So in this case, I want, if I define any data member, I want that data should be accessible to all classes within my assembly. But if someone try to access, if someone from third party assembly try to access my data, it should not be available. It should not be accessible. I would like to extend the scope up to my assembly level. I would like to extend scope of my data up to my assembly level, up to my group level. When you want, the scope of data has to be extended up to your group level, up to your assembly level. I mean, if the data has to be accessible to all classes within your assembly, not to the third party assembly. In that case, it should be defined as internal. Internal. Once you define any data member as internal, it will be accessible to all classes within the same assembly. But it will not be available to third-party assemblies. If someone try to access, someone from third-party assembly try to access your data, it cannot be. So when the scope has to be limited up to your class level, it should be defined as private. When the scope has to be extended up to your relative level, it should be defined as protected. When the scope has to be extended up to your assembly level, it should be defined as internal. Any questions, guys, so far? Guys, quick. I need responses from everyone. Otherwise, I'll think that,
Ravindra,
yeah.
yeah,
Please go
Ravindra Garu, I just have a question in protected access specifier. Can the like a relative class be in second assembly rather than being in the same assembly?
I mean, you are talking about third-party assembly?
Yeah, no, like protected. You said both the like it can be accessed within the class and it can be accessed by the relative class, right?
Yeah, yeah. So protected means here relative. The relative can be from, that comes
Yeah.
next. Yeah, relative can be from your assembly as well as third-party assembly. Okay. So if
Okay.
you're having relation
Yeah.
with someone, like if you're trusting someone, okay, if you
Okay.
think that yes, I can
Mm-hmm.
trust him so that I can share some data. So in that case, you can extend your relationship up to your friend level. So he can be
Okay.
from your
Okay.
class, he can be from your assembly, or it can be from third party assembly. So that will be our next scenario. Okay. Here you can see when relation, when you're talking about a relationship, a protective will come into the picture, right? So in the next,
Uh-huh.
here you can see protected plus internal. Okay. So we'll discuss later. That will be our next scenario. Okay. Please give me a second. Okay. So that is really very good question. Okay. So that will be our next scenario. Okay. Sorry guys, today I have a lot of disturbance at home. So. Okay. So as we discussed, so when the scope has to be limited up to a class level, then it should be defined as private. When it has to be extended up to a relative level within the same class, when the scope has to be extended up to a relative level within the same class, then it should be defined as protected. When the scope has to be extended up to your assembly level, if you want your data should be accessible to all classes within the assembly level, then it should be defined as internal. And next, there is another scenario. Let's say in the previous case, we have treated each assembly as one banking group. Here's the same thing. Let us consider assembly 1 as State Bank of India bank group and assembly 2 as Reserve Bank of India. Okay, let us consider assembly 1 as State Bank of India and assembly 2 as Reserve Bank of India. As I said, in India, all banks will be controlled by Reserve Bank of India. Okay, coming to Reserve Bank of India, Reserve Bank of India will also have the same banking, different sectors. Like Reserve Bank of India will have banking sector, credit cards, home loans and personal loans. Reserve Bank for India will also maintain that same hierarchy in their group. Yet let us consider assembly 1 as State Bank of India and assembly 2 as Reserve Bank of India. Coming to State Bank of India group, it will have banking sector. Let us consider C1 as banking sector, C2 as credit card sector and C3 as loan sector. In Reserve Bank of India also you will find same hierarchy: banking sector, loan sector and card sector. Okay. In State Bank of India, in assembly 1, C1 is considered as banking sector. As per Reserve Bank of India norms, in any banking, in banking sector are credit cards or home loans. In any sector, or forget about other sectors. Let us focus only on banking sector. In C1 in banking sector, as I said, as per Reserve Bank of India norms, if the transaction amount gets exceeded, 50 rupees, immediately that information should be shared with Reserve Bank of India. You need to make that particular information accessible to Reserve Bank of India. But coming to Reserve Bank of India group, there are different sectors inside Reserve Bank of India: banking sector, loan sector and card sector, right? So in this case, that information should not be shared with all these sectors. That information should be accessible to only one sector, that is banking sector. Coming to loan sector and credit sectors, you don't need to worry about those sectors. Those are part of their group, but you don't have to share any information with this loan sector and group sectors. The information of this particular user, that particular customer, should be accessible to only banking sector of third party group. If the transaction amount gets exceeded 50,000 rupees, immediately that information should be accessible to Reserve Bank of India. But coming to Reserve Bank of India group, there are n number of sectors inside Reserve Bank of India. You should not expose these details with all these sectors. You need to make it accessible to only one particular sector of Reserve Bank of India. So inside Reserve Bank of India, let us consider each sector as one class. B1 is one class, B2 is one class, B3 is one class. Each class represents one sector. Yet B1 is nothing but banking sector, B2 is nothing but card sector, B3 is nothing but loan sector. Right? So if the amount gets exceeded 50,000, immediately you need to make it accessible to only banking sector, not to others. That information should not be accessible to any other sector except banking sector. So in this case, you need to make your data accessible to only one particular class of third-party assembly, because you're having a relationship with only B1. You don't know anything about B2 and B3. There are 100 different sectors. There are 100 different classes in the third-party assembly. You cannot trust all other things because since you are not having relationship with any other class, you're having relationship with only banking sector of RBI. That is the reason if the transaction amount gets exceeded 50,000, then that information should be available to only one particular class of third party assembly, only that particular banking sector of third party assembly. So in this case, you need to extend the scope of your data up to your third party relative level. Here B1 is from third party assembly, third party group, and B1 is a class which is from third party group. So now you need to extend your access up to B1 level, but is from third party. So when the access has to be extended up to third party level, then it should be defined as protected internal, which is nothing but protected plus internal, right? So when the data has to be accessible to your group as well as your relative from third party group, when the data has to be accessible to your group as well as your relative from third party group, then protected internal will come into the picture. Protected means within the assembly anyone can access your data. I'm sorry, internal means within the assembly anyone can access your data, and protected means the scope will be extended up to your relative level. So if you want your data should be accessible to all your classes within the same assembly, and this should also be available to your relative from third party assembly, then it should be defined as protected internal. Once you define any data member as protected internal, then it will be accessible to all classes within the assembly and only your relative from third party assembly. If B2 tries to access your data, he cannot. B3 try to access your data, he cannot. Since you are not having any relationship with B2 and B3, you haven't extended your scope up to B2 and B3. The scope has been extended up to only B1 because he is a relative. You can trust him. That's the reason you have extended the scope of data up to only B1 level, not to B2 and B3. If someone from third party assembly wants to access your data, if you are okay with that, if you need to extend the scope up to only that particular party level, then you need to define your data member as protected internal, which is nothing but internal plus protected. Internal is nothing but the scope will be extended up to assembly level plus protected. So when third party relative comes into the picture, then you need to use protected internal. Any questions, guys, so far? Okay. Next, I don't want to put any restrictions on my data. If I define something in any class, if I define any data member either in C1, C2 or C3, if I define any data member irrespective of assemblies, irrespective of classes, my data should be accessible to each and every one, each and every class within my assembly as well as third party assembly. So there will be no restrictions on my data. Basically, it should be available to each and every class, each and every assembly, each and every user. The best example for this is advertisement data. Advertisement data. Coming to advertisement data, you should not put any restrictions, right? This data should be available to only these people. This data should be available to only these people, right? So it should be available to each and every user, each and every class, each and every people. You need to increase number of impressions as many as possible, as much as you can. That is what needed for every advertisement data, right? So if you are going to store any advertisement related data, so irrespective of classes, irrespective of assemblies, irrespective of libraries, basically advertisement data should be accessible to each and every user. So if you don't want to put any restriction, if you don't want to restrict access of your data, if the data has to be accessible to all classes, all assemblies, then it should be defined as public. Once any data member is defined as public, then you don't have to worry about it. So anyone can access your data directly from anywhere, from any assembly. That is the nature of public. So this is very, very important. There is a lot of difference between internal and public. Many interviewers will ask this question. What is the difference between internal and public? So what is the nature of internal? Internal will limit the scope up to assembly level, right? If you define any data members as internal, the scope will be limited only up to that same assembly level. It means within the same assembly, any class can access your data. But once it comes outside of this, if third-party assembly tries to access your data, they cannot. But coming to public, there is no restrictions for public. So it can be accessible within the assembly as well as third-party assembly. That is the difference between internal and public. What is the difference between protected and protected internal? Coming to protected, if the scope of your data has to be extended up to your relative level, who is in the same class, then protected will come to the picture. If the scope of your data has to be extended up to your third-party relative level, who is from third-party assembly, then protected internal will come into the picture. And coming to private, it will provide a lot of security for your data. Once you define anything as private, the scope will be limited up to only your class level. And within the same namespace also, if someone try to access your data, they cannot, because the scope will be limited up to class level. Within the same class, anyone can access your data, but once it comes outside of that class, nobody can access your data. Okay, any questions guys about access specifiers? And Rajita, has that cleared your question? Protected and protected internal? Okay, so whenever, if at all you need to extend your scope up to your third party level, then always think about only protected internal. Don't make it public. You can make it public, but if you make it public, you will lose the control over your data. You cannot have control, full control over your data. So that is the reason always, you need to make that, you need to set that access accordingly based on your requirement. So the better, recommended keyword access specifier is protected internal. If at all you are going to extend the scope up to your third party level, always go with protected internal so that you will have full control over your data, right? Let's say first I'm having relationship with B1. Yes, you can extend the scope up to B1. Later, B2 become my good friend. Yes, you can extend your access up to B2, but not to others. If you make it public, everyone from anywhere can access your data. So if you make it protected internal, slowly you can start extending your relationship towards all other your members, your friends. So that's why protected internal will give you, a lot of control over that particular data member. Okay. So this is something about access specifier. So as I said, I'm sorry guys, today there was a lot of disturbance. So there was a disconnect. Okay, so so as I said, as a developer, if you are going to define any data member, while designing each and every data member, it is your responsibility that, so you should also define scope of each and every data member. You should also define scope of each and every data member. That is mandatory. Otherwise, you will lose control over your data. Someone can easily hack your data. This is the first level of security should be implemented around your data. There will be, so many complex levels, but this is the first level of security should be implemented at the programming level. If this is going to be transmitted from one system to another system over the network, so again, some more complexity, some more, security levels will come into the picture. On top of this level of security, you need to add some more layers to increase that level of security. So that is different thing. Some kind of security will be implemented using protocols, transmission protocols. Some level of security will be implemented using some formatting protocols and some certificates. So there are too many things are available, but that's it different. But ultimately, while designing each and every data member at the programming level, the first level of security should be implemented. That is mandatory for every data member. So based on your requirement, based on type of scenario, type of requirement as a developer, so you should decide so what type of access specifier has to be used to accommodate this requirement, whether it is a private, protected internal, or public. So that should be defined for each and every data member. But still it is an optional. You don't have to define the access specifier for your data member. It is an optional case, but you should define, as a developer, you should define the scope of your data member. If you don't define it, so by default, it will consider a default access specifier that it can be any one of these four. So we will discuss it later. But as a developer, that is your primary responsibility. While designing each and every data member, you should also define scope of your data and data member. So this is something about your access specifier. Okay. Now we are aware of all those four parts, right? Let's go back to variable declaration. How to define a variable? Whenever you want to define a variable, you should define these four things. You have to take care of all the four things. What are those four things? Access specifier, that is the first thing that everyone should define. Access specifier, you should specify the scope of your data member. Here you should tell the system it is a private, public, protected, internal. Next, data type. What type of data is going to be stored? It is a numeric data, non-numeric data. If it is a numeric, it is an integer or float. If it is a non-numeric, it is a character, string, or boolean data type, or image, picture. The type of data has to be specified here. So based on this only, the system will allocate that much amount of memory in the system. Next, variable name. It is a user defined one. User can give any name, that is your choice. Next, value. Value is nothing but data. So this is optional at the time of declaration. If you want hardcode that value, you can provide it at the time of declaration. If that has to be taken dynamically at runtime, then don't hardcode this value. It means don't provide this value at the time of declaration. So this could also be provided later from anywhere, from any one of your method or class. Okay. So now we know how to define a variable, because we know how to define an access specifier, how to define a data type, how to define a variable name, how to give you a value. We are aware of all these four parts. So in the next class, we'll start building, some simple examples, and we'll start writing some logic also. Okay. So in the next class, we will see how to define a variable, how to assign values to variables, and how to perform some basic operations between two different data members and values. Any questions from this class or last class? Thank you guys. Okay, so we will meet tomorrow at same time. Okay, so this is this all theoretical part. It's a kind of somewhat boring part, but once we start with programming part, it will be really very interesting, because there I'll let you know how to build the logic for different requirements. So we'll be discussing some real-time scenarios with real-time requirements. Okay, so there it will be more interesting. Once we get into the logical part, that programming part, it will be really very interesting. Okay. Okay. Okay, guys.
Ravinder garu, can you please share me the previous materials?
Sure. I'll share it with you.
Okay.
Okay. I have already converted that to MP4 format. So I'll send you, consolidated list of yesterday one and today recording. I'll send you. Is okay.
Yeah, and the previous session slides also.
Previous one, I have only one, the yesterday class, right? We started it recording from yesterday, all right?
Yeah, not the recordings. You said that you have some material for last week and previous class, right?
Oh, the demo class material you are asking about?
Yeah, some kind of presentation slides.
Previous class material, I don't think I have only this PPT slide, but you don't even require, right? This is we just discuss why should I go for .NET and what is .NET framework. But still, if you want, I can provide that. Okay, anyhow, that is also needed, right?
Okay. Okay, sure.
No problem. I guess I can provide you that too. Okay.
Okay.
Don't worry, I can provide you that too. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So if there are no questions, okay. So you can drop the meeting. Okay. So we will meet tomorrow at same time.
you.